I attended a local university, got really good grades, ended up getting a large scholarship, and qualifying for financial aid. Dealt with EM my entire life. My accomplishments were hers, and she would often highlight them as her own. My first year at university, she got mad that I wasn't around, as I was at school living on campus, and she cut me off. I had asked for her tax return so I could file for financial aid for the next year, and she refused. This is a requirement if you're still being considered a dependent. So I took matters into my own hands, went to the FA office, had an awesome counselor who walked me through all my options, petitioned to have my aid submitted on my income instead, signed to say I was an independent student with no relationship with my EP, started filing my taxes as a single adult. Fast forward many years later, EM starts making comments to me about how they're still paying off my student loans. I ignored for a while, then I got a really good job and it would come up more often, especially if there were money problems. EM didn't know the amount of money I had taken out for a loan was minimal, $30,000 or so for 4 years, and I'd been paying it off the entire time, so it came to a head. How can you be paying off my loans if I've already paid them off? She was shocked, I knew. Then everything came into focus because I hadn't been asking for EM's returns. They couldn't claim me on taxes anymore. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. Edit clarifying that EM had taken out a very small loan, but then tried to get me to pay off EM's own student loans later after she refinanced that small one plus all of hers into one. It's not uncommon. Back in the 80s, a college friend of mine qualified for all sorts of grants and loans. She'd fill out the paperwork, the checks would be sent to her, and her mom would skim off whatever she wanted, to do whatever she wanted with, as in, screw your tuition, I need a new jumbo-sized television. One time, for some reason, my friend missed a crucial deadline and was faced with dropping out her senior year. My dad found out and said if she could come up with the money for books, he'd loan her enough money to finish her senior year. Momsy found out. She called constantly. When would the check arrive? Would he mind hurrying up? They didn't want to miss the deadline. My dad, no fool, figured out what was going on pretty fast and told her that he'd already sent the university a check and not to worry, her kid would finish her senior year on time. Oh my God. The screams. How could he do that to her? She was a single mother. She had to make a car payment. She had to pay the rent. My friend's little sisters needed the hair done and new dresses for prom. How could he be so mean and not make the check out to her? Dad again, no fool, quietly hung up, smirking. And my friends called a few days later in tears to apologize. It seems her mother, a woman who didn't care to work even when in between boyfriends, considered tuition to be her cash cow to be milked at will. I rather suspect Momsy is one of many reasons why a lot of loans and scholarships now go directly to the school of choice and not the student. And as for my friend, come to the second semester she got religion. Dropped out, and last time I heard moved to Oklahoma to spread the word. But at least the school got the money and not her mother or the rather sleazy minister of the non-denominational church that derailed her academic career 30 plus years ago. Next story. Around 2013, I was working in a bowling/recreation center for the US military. This is about one of the so very many interactions I was unfortunate enough to have with entitled people. Some military spouses can be some of the most entitled people around, and this incident is one of them. There's mom, entitled mother, dad, and their wild kids, about ages 6 and 4. The start of the interaction was normal enough. Assign them a bowling lane, give out their shoes, and direct them to where the lighter bowling balls were since the kids were young. It was early to midday on a weekday, so while the lunch crowd was bustling, the bowling lanes weren't. They get through just a few frames before the kids start to get antsy, running around, climbing on the equipment, pretty much exhibiting how to not act in public. The bowling center side was a fairly small, just a 10-lane house. It used to be a 14-lane house, but 4 lanes were removed and a game area put in with a laser maze room, some arcade games, a pool table, and a table tennis table. Wild kids are taking advantage of the emptiness and just running around and screaming, trying to hide under tables, moving furniture around, running in and out of the laser maze room on and off the pool table, All the while, EM is refusing to leave the bowling pit and screaming at the kids to return to her. My staff and I continuously keep taking turns to tell the kids to stop running and screaming, stay out of the laser maze room, get off the pool tables, stop moving the furniture around, etc., etc., etc. EM never said anything to us. EM never said anything to any of us during this time until one of the wild kids decides to check the pro shop door to see if it will open. Curses to my boss for leaving it unlocked. It opens! Wild kid starts to throw around bottles containing chemicals used to plug and clean bowling balls, rolling bowling balls around in their rings, pushing on the pedal that turns on the bowling ball spinner, and trying to play with the drill machine. I run in there and escort the kid out, and this is when EM starts to lose her sanity. She screams, really screams, as if on the floor of a concert at us. Through these screams, she's asking me and another coworker why we aren't helping to watch her kids and questioning why we're allowing her kids to run everywhere. Dad was silent the entire time. He had this look of, I'm so tired of this crap. I tell her that staff are not babysitters and that she's responsible for the behavior of her kids. She keeps insisting that it is our job, with me repeating that our staff are not trained in youth care because, well, we're not the child care facility. The screaming was so loud, my boss, who was on the other side of the building, heard it, walked over to see what was going on. We filled him in on what was going on, and he told us to just get back to what we were doing, and he would stay at the counter and watch them. They finally finished their game and came up to the counter to pay. EM was still complaining, not about her kids, not about her kids' behavior, only about how we weren't helping her watch her kids. While she was walking out, she asked rhetorically why we don't have a play area for young kids like the fast food restaurants. This is a military-based bowling center, not a Dave & Buster's. Of course, her last words, I'm never coming back here, my boss said in a low whisper, please don't. Fast forward 3 years later, she came back. I didn't recognize her at first as she had gained some weight and grew out her hair. She was there with girlfriends, no WKs or dad, but she was wearing a very small infant on her back in a carrier. When she spoke to tell my coworker her shoe size, I froze, my eyes went wide, and my brain-to-mouth filter failed as I said, oh God, I remember her. I may not have recognized her looks, but I knew that voice. She must have heard me because she shot me a death stare. I think I was too surprised to realize I said what I said out loud. I could not believe it. She was back. It had been 3 years, so I thought her husband probably got orders to another base, so they just moved away. Nope, she was still around. I found out later that in those past 3 years, she had taken on a couple of home-based businesses, MLMs that military wives are notorious for doing, and obviously got pregnant and had a third kid. Since the WKs weren't there and she was with other women, perhaps she'd be happy enough to not cause a scene. Unfortunately, she started to bowl. Still wearing the baby on her back. The way this woman bowled when she released the bowling ball, she would lean far back. She would lean forward at the same time her upper body was bowing down very deeply. This would cause the baby to slide upwards and forwards. I left it to my boss to have to tell her she could not continue bowling while wearing the baby. She wasn't happy since she hadn't brought a carrier or anything else to put the baby in. Luckily, her friends understood and were happy enough to pass the baby around. Never saw her again, as later in 2016, I ended up moving away to another base. Ex-Navy here can verify that some, a minority I think, military wives believe that their personal bowel movements smell like roses, their feral offspring are incapable of error or misbehavior, and that they're fully deserving of all the subservience and groveling their belief is their due. Yet, amazingly, none of them is the result of a virgin birth. Go figure. Next story. I bought my first flat when I was in my 20s. I rented out a room to a guy from Poland, awesome flatmate, FM, super good at DIY and maintenance. I was seeing someone for a while, let's call her Ghost. Ghost lived with 2 other girls, one of whom is the titular ex-friend, let's call her Karen. Ghost and I broke up. From the imaginative name you can guess what happened. And that whole friend group ditched me. My career went pretty well and I bought a house in the suburbs. I decided to let FM stay on in the flat on the same rent with the proviso that he not sublet but his girlfriend GF moves in, which is fine. I get the mortgage covered and a tenant who is better at maintaining the place than I am. He gets a 2-bed flat for half the price. A few years on, and a certain idiot referendum passes, and flatmate and his girlfriend are moving home to Poland. His girlfriend has already gone back, but when I'm over sorting some stuff with FM, I see a huge pile of moving boxes, etc. in the spare room. Oh, is that GF stuff? Are you going to be able to fit all of that in the car? No, that's Karen's stuff. She asked if she could leave it here while we were still here. As it turns out, Karen was still friends with GF. She found out they were leaving and that their rent was a pretty good deal. She told GF that she had squared it all with me and that she was going to take it all over. I will confess to a few minutes of panic and confusion. I have not spoken to this person in years. She thinks she's going to move into my flat and doesn't even ask? How the hell does she even intend to pay rent given she has zero made attempts to contact me? And why would I not go for market rate? I'm honestly baffled and somewhat morbidly fascinated to find out how she thinks this is going to work. I don't really want to get into some kind of ridiculous squatters' rights squabble with them, so I contacted my solicitor, think a non-trial lawyer. She recommends I get the locks changed and install a security camera, and to send the inevitable roof hitting her way when Karen turns up and tries to get in. I actually think she's quite excited by the drama, a bit more interesting than property conveyancing. I will explain all this to FM. He agrees to move out 2 weeks early and even helps me fit the doorbell camera. He really was the best. So that's where we are. I pretty much have the Ring app open constantly on my phone. I have pretty clear instructions not to say anything other than give my solicitors information and record any and all correspondence when it happens. I'm presuming she will hear from GF though. I'll post an update if anything interesting comes of it. This is just fascinating to read. Karen thinks she's just gonna move into your property without your permission and get squatters' rights. I hope you moved her stuff out of the apartment, check with your solicitor, so she can't claim some kind of tenancy due to the property being there. Fun times. No, I photographed it and got FM to write a letter to the solicitor saying it's exactly as left. Sternly warned not to look or interfere with it. If it ends up being moved to storage, then get a registered movers to do it. But hopefully not, because then I'll end up on the hook. Fascinating laws when you're not being screwed by them. The squatter's right thing is probably an exaggeration. The law was changed a few years back and she won't be able to prove she resided there without bills and utilities, all firmly in my name. But it's a lot easier when they're not on the property. You could put her stuff in storage so there would be nothing of hers there, but it would cost you. I guess if you paid for a month and she didn't collect, then it would be disposed of by the company. If I were you, I'd not want her stuff there. It complicates things and you just don't want her stuff in your space. Can't wait to hear what happens when she turns up. How does she think she's getting a key? Does she already have one? So many questions. Next story. As many know, my sister tried to get money out of me when we were kids, and she never wanted to pay back any loans, so I almost never loaned her anything. On this day, I was 14 and was essentially babysitting my sister around the mall. It was a Saturday and my dad was at work. EMB wanted to get her hair and nails done. So she told me to walk my sister around the mall. We went to a few places and my sister blew through $40 pretty much right away. Then she tried to drag me into a lingerie store. Yeah, my 11-year-old sister tried to take me to look at ladies' underwear. I refused to go in and she pouted. So we went to the food court. Sis went for her favorite food there and I got a burger if I recall correctly. Then Sis dragged me around some more and we went to the video store. She wanted to buy a DVD of the new movie that was released at the time, but quickly noticed she'd blown through half of her money in one day. So she asked me to buy the DVD. I don't remember what it was, but I do remember not wanting it. Sis tried to say that it'd be a family DVD and we could watch together. I said I still wasn't buying it, so she had a tantrum, but I just ignored it. Following that, we went to the game store, and while there, Sis found a video game she really wanted, but I did not. I think it was Grand Theft Auto or something, but I was but I was and still am bored by those. And besides, I couldn't even buy it for her even if I wanted to because it was an M-rated game, and you had to be an adult to buy it. She had another fit, and then we met back up with EMB. Sis cried to her that I didn't buy her anything and she was low on cash. I said it wasn't my job to buy her anything and she had her own money. Sis whined about how badly she wanted the DVD and how we could have watched it together. EMB tried to order me to just go buy the DVD by saying it didn't matter if I used my own money or not. It was going to be a family used DVD. I told her I didn't care and it wasn't even a movie I wanted to see. EMB got in my face and again ordered me to go buy the DVD with my own money while pointing in the direction of the video store. So I just laughed and said that I would not. Even though all the makeup on her face, I could see how red she was turning. Then I said I would use my own money the way I want to, and just started walking. I walked straight back to the video store, bought a much cheaper used anime DVD that I wanted instead, then went back to the game store and bought a used copy of Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. Back then, a used copy still only costed $20. Well, my Legend of Karen mother called me selfish and said I was a bad brother. I just reminded her how my money was my own, and even dad tells her that. I won't spend it on anything I don't want. We left the mall and both my mother and sister refused to speak to me for the rest of the day. I took the GameCube into my room and had a blast playing Zelda. We did have another copy of that same game, but my sister liked to hoard it for some reason, because she knew I liked playing it. Whenever I mentioned I wanted to play certain games, my sister suddenly had a renewed interest in them and then insisted on playing them again first. So getting my own copies when I could was a must because I could keep them in my room. Still have that Wind Waker game too, as it was one of the few games my sister managed to not steal or break when she stole the Xbox 360 and destroyed 3 other game systems at my dad's house. Your sister reminds me of my older brother. When we were kids, he kept asking me how much money I had in my bank account and if he could have it. I always said no. He wanted it so he could buy a Commander 64 computer. He was tired of staying after school and using the computers there, only had around $125. He did eventually get one for Christmas, but my dad bought the disk drive for himself, so my older brother was forced to share with me. He's still just as entitled and greedy, lol.